Well, welcome to Mining Now, and we're live in Las Vegas at Mine Expo. And I'm your host, Roy Slack, and this show is featuring Geotek. And my guest today is Alice Dineen. And Alice is the North American Sales Manager, is that correct?
I am indeed.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
I
no.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We chatted a bit before, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. But first of all, Mine Expo. Are you surviving?
Oh, wow. Well, just about. It's the last day, isn't it? Yeah, you know what? It's actually been a fantastic show so far. It's definitely one of the largest shows we've been to. I mean,
It's a big show.
Las Vegas, right? But yeah, no, we've had some success already. So yeah, I'm very happy with how it's turned out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I always like to get to know a bit about our guests. So give us a bit of background. How did you end up in this industry and in Geotek?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's quite a long story, really. My background is in geology. I actually practiced geology at the University of Glasgow. So I am a geo by background. Sold my soul somewhere along the way because I'm in sales now.
Okay.
No, I jest. So starting with Geotek, actually, I started as a geologist. So I was using some of our tech to actually scan the core, which we'll come to later. But I didn't really know that I had a keen eye for sales until a couple of years in, when I sort of started verging more towards the commercial side. And I found out that I absolutely love it. So that essentially brings me to where I am now. So I moved into technical sales, having conversations with clients about what we do, how it can help us as an industry. And then on a more regional basis, I now focus on North America, so Mexico, US, Canada, and and that brings us to today.
Well, it's not unique. I've heard this before where people that have used the technology liked it so much that they actually joined the company.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's always a good thing. Yeah. I mean, the tech at Geotek, which we'll come to, the tech is fantastic. Yeah. And it's really exciting, having used the technology myself, seeing it being deployed to, the mining markets, oil and gas markets, research, and really knowing what and how they're using the system, because, I logged core on the system too.
So we've alluded to it in our discussion so far, but give us an overview of Geotek.
Geotek. So we're founded in the UK. That's where our head office is. We were actually founded in 1994, so going back about 3 decades now. And our roots actually start in research and academia. We had one of our core logging systems, our multi-sensor core logging system, go out to the United States Geological Survey. And back then we were mainly focusing on physical properties. So since then, we've explored various markets, mining, why we're here today, oil and gas, as I said, geotechnical, unconventionals. And in order to reach our client base in those markets, we basically had to look at various sense tech, whether it be physical properties, whether it be geochemistry and imaging, and then integrate those onto our core scanning systems. So essentially, we manufacture and provide core scanning systems to various markets globally. But we manufacture everything in the UK, and then it gets shipped out from there. We do have another office over in Salt Lake City, which I'm currently in the process of transferring over to, which is very exciting. But
we can talk about that later. One of our offices is in Salt Lake City. Great place.
Oh, great. It is a great place.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour, brought to you by Savona Equipment. Find, market, and sell surplus and used equipment. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. As heavy machinery specialists for mining, SMS Equipment knows performance, like the performance they achieve together in a partnership dedicated to the success of their mining customers. At SMS Equipment, they're more than machines from trusted brands. They're the people beside you today and every day, bringing industry-leading technology and expertise to your mining operation. Because the right partnership makes everything possible. SMS Equipment, partners in your possibilities. Discover what's possible at smsequipment.com. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymont's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com.
So I'm going to frame this, okay? So you're talking to a mining engineer, and when I think of scanning core, I think of looking at it, okay? So that's how far back I go. So give us some idea when, the product that you're using, it's scanning, but there's a lot of data that's extracted from it. So what do you learn from scanning?
Well, that's a very good question, Roy, and that really brings us to our whole company ethos, which is to extract the maximum amount of data you can from core samples, right? So conventionally, we would have basically looked at the core. You'd have the geologist stood there visually logging the core, taking notes. And of course, that can be very subjective. I mean, you have the age-old saying of you have 10 different geologists looking at the core, you're going to get 11 interpretations. That's
I remember the one, you always look for a one-handed geologist.
Yeah.
Because on this hand, on the other. Anyway, it's an old joke.
There you go. But what we're trying to do is take away that subjective nature.
Yeah.
So by integrating various sensor technology onto automated scanning systems, we're not only speeding up that process, but we're basically creating a system whereby we can log core from an unbiased perspective, and it's non-subjective, so we can trust the data, the accurate data that's coming off the system. It's reliable. And then, of course, on top of that, we have a digital record as well. Yeah. Whereas previously, as you say, conventional logging techniques, you'd just be using a notepad and paper.
So my background in shaft sinking and mine construction, and whenever we had a shaft pilot hole, after we said, did you check on this? And they would say no. So maybe I'm not sure if I understand or not, but when the core is done, there's all kinds of different information you can extract from it.
Yeah, of course. So we have a range of multi-sensor core logging systems, but we can integrate various physical properties, whether it be density, P and S wave velocity, natural gamma, so looking at potassium, thorium, uranium concentrations within core.
Hydrology?
Well, we're looking at magnetic susceptibility and resistivity as well.
Oh, okay.
That kind of rounds up our physical property sensors, if you like. And then on the geochemistry front, which I guess is slightly more applicable to the mining market,
for sure.
We're looking at XRF, so you have your elemental chemistry, VNAR and SWIR hyperspectral, so you get your mineralogy from that, color spectrophotometry, high resolution imaging, so we can do wet and dry core photography as well. And we integrate that all onto one core logging system. So you can collect data simultaneously from all of those sensors, and then on top of that, they're all depth co-registered. So what I basically mean by that is that let's say you have a geo out in the field and they're using one of those PXRF handhelds.
Okay.
If you wanted to collect another data set, so let's say a VNAR and SWIR mineralogy data set, you might be using another device to do that, or you might be doing something destructive like XRD. If you wanted to marry up your geochemistry from the XRF with your mineralogy data from the VNAR and the SWIR, you're going to have to do that manually and try and work out where in the borehole you are, for example. Whereas our systems already have all of the sensors depth co-registered, so you don't have to marry up different data sets.
The mining industry is evolving. Efficiency and sustainability are more important than ever. Drawing on decades of expertise, Aderco's innovative fuel additive enables you to decarbonize your operations without sacrificing performance. Lower emissions, protect your engines, and save on fuel expenses, all with one simple solution. Choose Aderco, the smart choice for sustainable, profitable mining, because you can save money while making a positive impact. Visit aderco.com to learn more. Who is Savannah Equipment? Savannah Equipment Limited is a buyer and seller of new, used, and refurbished industrial equipment with a focus on mining and construction. They find, market, and sell surplus and used equipment. Does the equipment need work? They can refurbish. Is there something you can't find? They source those hard-to-find items. Selling equipment? They buy, consign, and broker equipment and asset packages. Need equipment moved? Savino Equipment manages logistics for worldwide delivery. Surface and underground ore processing, concentrating and refining plants and equipment, power generation and electrical, pump, material handling, alluvial placer, gold mining, recycling, and much more. If you need to buy, sell, find, refurbish, or move equipment, you need Savino Equipment. Savino Equipment, more equipment every day. Visit them at savinoequipment.com. SafeGauge specializes in innovative safety solutions, ensuring precision and reliability when conducting routine heavy vehicle maintenance. Their award-winning safe test range ensures workplace safety and efficiency. Their technology allows live testing to be completed up to 100 meters away, removing technicians from the line of fire and eliminating live work. SafeGauge, work smart, stay safe. Visit safegauge.com today.
The other thing, and we talked about it because it caught my eye when I visit the website, you spend good money on drilling, so you should maximize the data you extract from it. So, but I'm going to add to that because we're in love with data now in our industry. And 5 years ago we weren't, okay? But now we want everything. But a lot of companies are finding they've got too much data or they don't know what to do with it. But what I'm hearing is you know what to do with it.
Well, that's the thing, and it's a real issue actually across the board, not just the mining industry, but many different industries. It's the same in the oil and gas sector. If you're using one of these systems, just as an example, a core logging system, you want to make the most out of the data.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you've got to have some idea of, okay, what are my applications here? What am I actually going to use the data for? On the exploration front, it might be deciding where your next drill campaign is for next year. Or it could be in the field, real-time decision making.
Yeah.
So for example, if you place some core onto one of our core scanning systems, the data that you see in live time could help influence your drill program for that year.
Sure.
It could help you decide where to drill, where not to drill, and all of that type of information. So you've really got to have some sort of idea into what your applications are. On the production side of things, so that was exploration, but on the production side of things, you can use these systems for grade control and for QA, QC of what you're actually mining. So it's used in a much different sense, so a different application really. But in terms of the data coming off of the system, we definitely want to have some sort of objective of where is this data going to go? How is it going to help us? And a lot of the time we see clients in the junior sphere or even tier one mining companies feeding the data into modeling softwares, for example, to help build their block models, and really seeing great benefits there. Because again, going back to conventional techniques, you wouldn't have all that information to feed into modeling softwares. So it can be really useful in the long run.
And I'm picturing, we always have this debate, some of the companies I'm on boards of, about the difference between exploration and production, and drilling to expand your existing reserves. Is that exploration? Or maybe brownfields, but not greenfields. But you talked about exploration and you talked about operations. And then I think about a mine developing their 3-year plan or their 5-year plan, which is kind of in between. But this would be very useful from a mine planning perspective.
No, and you're completely right, Roy.
Yeah.
I think you could argue that core scanning or core logging would fit into any stage of the mining chain, really, from exploration through to feasibility.
Well, discovery.
From discovery, through the whole chain.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing commonly in the industry, and what we need to get better at in the industry, is shortening that gap from exploration and discovery through to production, because you want a faster ROI, right?
Yep.
That's what your investors want anyway.
Yep.
So what we're seeing commonly is these types of systems being used in the earlier stages, but maybe towards feasibility. So for example, one of our clients, Xanadu Mines over in Mongolia, they actually used a couple of these systems just ahead of pre-feasibility studies.
Okay.
And what they were planning to do was use the core scanning data to basically not only propel them through feasibility faster, but you know how expensive feasibility can be. You want to get past that hurdle as quickly as you can, and it's a cost-saving exercise as well. But they basically use the non-subjective data coming off of one of our core logging systems, the BoxScan, and they propelled themselves through feasibility at a faster rate, and they also saved costs because they had to do less testing throughout their feasibility studies because they already had the ground truthing data from the core scanner. So we're seeing the BoxScan being used in that sort of stage quite frequently. But as you said, it could be used at any stage for different applications.
So I had an epiphany here, which you know, but it just dawned on me. I mean, first of all, bringing a mine into production quicker is everybody's dream in this industry. Any way we can do it is great. The other thing, when you're in exploration phase, there's a credibility, I won't say issue, maybe challenge in the industry. And when you're presenting your reserves, whatever status they're in, for investors early on, something like this with a lot more data and I would think more credibility would really be helpful.
Oh, it would definitely be helpful. I think that's a really good point, Roy, because you could use the data for for any part of the stage.
Yeah.
Any part of the chain. Part of the chain.
We'll get into some detail. We've been talking in generalities, and we could talk about. I've got lots of other ideas that some crazy, but I want to get into some detail now. And one of the products you talked about was BoxScan.
Yes.
And so I'm assuming that BoxScan does some of these things, but can you give us more of an overview of that product?
Yeah, so as I said, we manufacture a range of different multi-sensor core logging systems, MSCL systems we call them. Our BoxScan system was specifically designed for the mineral exploration and mining markets.
Yeah.
So with that, we've designed it to be fit for purpose, to go to sites. You know how remote some of these exploration sites can be sometimes.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. Haven't we all? But sometimes they like decent infrastructure. Sometimes they like any sort of internet connection.
Yeah.
So with that, we've had to really think about this system and how it can be applicable to those sort of sites, because we want this system up near the drill rig, feeding the core through the system, and then giving the geos near real-time information. So with that, it's ruggedized. All of the software which we develop in-house for the BoxScan system is basically fit for purpose in that you don't need an internet connection. You can actually use it on these really remote sites. And that's the acquisition and the processing. And you can basically do everything on site. We actually had a project for De Beers last year up in northern Canada, middle of nowhere, looking at kimberlites.
I know the project.
Yeah.
We've worked there in the past.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so you know how remote it is.
Yep.
But we had one of these units go up there by helicopter, and then they basically built a tent surrounding the unit. So as long as you have power, you know, it runs on standard US mains power or European power.
Yeah.
As long as you have power, then you can log the core at your remote location.
Okay.
But it's been specifically designed to go to those sites and to be, you know, as user-friendly as possible. I mean, we have geos using these systems, we have techs using these systems. We've tried to make it as simple as possible to collect a huge range of data to help influence drill programs, for example. Yeah.
So I'm trying to visualize it, but the physical scanning, okay? So I'm drilling, I pull core out of the hole, I'm boxing it or doing whatever. At what point are you physically scanning it?
Well, so I mean, that's very dependent on the client, the type of process,
setup, whatever,
their own SOPs. So it's really about developing a workflow that works for them. I would say generally it tends to be that the core is extracted from the ground, then it is cleaned somehow or washed down, and once it's dry and boxed, then it goes straight onto the BoxScan system. So we can load the full box onto the system, and then, as I said, we have a range of imaging and geochemistry sensors which basically move over the core box to acquire the data, and then it's a case of offloading the box and then onto the next one. So you have
I should have known that, shouldn't I, with the name BoxScan?
Well, we've tried, like I said, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. No,
Okay.
you're all good, Roy.
So there's BoxScan. We had another product that I found interesting because I really know nothing about spectroscopy?
Spectroscopy.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that either. Okay, but this is another product you mentioned.
Yes. So yeah, we also have another product that's very applicable to the mining market, which is our hyperspectral core scanner. So rather than focusing on the multi-parametric aspect that the BoxScan gives us, our hyperspectral scanner specifically looks at mineralogy. So we have a really high resolution hyperspectral camera integrated onto the system that looks at the visual near infrared and the short wavelength infrared. And we basically move over the core box, similar to the BoxScan. We move over the core box to acquire the data. And then from that, we can extract mineralogy data. So we can quantify mineralogy from the core sample. But we can also take a very high resolution hyperspectral image where we can basically segment out certain minerals and view them visually, which as a geo, I mean, that's incredible to see. There are pros and cons to both systems. I would say the BoxScan is designed to be used in the field and to have small data file sizes. So it's very manageable in terms of the data you get off the system. The hyperspectral system gives you specifically only mineralogy data, and you're working with very large file sizes. So if you're uploading to any sort of cloud-based software, then you have to take that sort of information into account. So they're very much for different applications, but they kind of go hand in hand at the same time. We do have mineralogy integrated onto the BoxScan system as well, but it's a point sensor rather than a really high-resolution hyperspectral camera on the hyperspectral system.
So when I asked about how it was done, you said it works differently for different clients or customers. And I imagine there's a lot of interaction with your clients before any application, right? You have to understand what they're looking for.
Well, exactly. And that goes back to, I guess, my point about applications. You really want to know, okay, what am I going to use the system for? What do we want to do with the data afterwards? Do we want to feed it into modeling software, for example? Do we want to use the data to influence our next drill program? What do we want to use the data for? So yes, it's a case of having lengthy conversations with clients to try and understand that, so we can cater each project towards each client. And I guess that kind of brings me to my next point, Roy, which would be our sort of business model at Geotek. So as I said, we manufacture all of our systems in the UK, but we do offer a flexible business model in terms of how clients would like to use the system. So what I mean by that is that if a client comes to us and they'd like to purchase a system, then by all means, we will let them purchase the system. And then it's a case of shipping the system to site. We'll go train their techs, their geos, and then essentially leave them to it with support from remote support from Geotek. But we also offer leasing options and service options, whereby we can basically deploy a system to site, and we can either train a client to use their geos to log the core themselves, and it's a case of they can just lease it on a monthly basis, or we can perform the logging and basically just deliver the data to the clients. So
that's almost like a consulting service. So you're
precisely.
From product supply to client support to actually doing the work. The other thing I was going to ask is whether you would run into this. So I'm the client, and I say, I want to know the grade and the structure. And then you would say, well, do you also want to know this? Like, I'm trying to put, there's certain education going on here, right? Because things are changing.
Of course, it's almost a snowball effect. Once you start talking about one thing, then it's on to the next. So you say, for example, if structure's particularly important in your deposit, then we might want to focus more on, we have some machine learning algorithms integrated onto the BoxScan system, whereby we can take the data and we can output certain structural deliverables. So for example, we actually have, and I didn't mention this previously, but we have a 3D laser profiler built into the system. And what that does is it essentially takes a topographical height raster map of the core box. And from that, you can get structural information like RQD, for example. And then we can also segment whole core versus slabbed core versus rubble in the box versus empty core loss, for example. So that also all feeds into curation as well. But on the machine learning front, we can look at various applications. we can basically segment a lot of our data, and we can look at things like sulfide mapping, whereby you segment the sulfides and you can visually see where the sulfides are within the core sample. And we can do that for multiple different core samples and deposit types. But again, this all feeds into early conversations with clients and actually understanding, okay, what do they want out of this system? And then we'll advise them down the appropriate route.
Do you have anyone that says everything?
Almost everyone says everything.
We want everything.
And why not? And why not? You know, the more information you can gather, the better. I mean, it's all about understanding the deposit in more detail so we can basically save costs as a number one thing. Cut the timeline, as we said previously, because as an industry, we really need to get better at that. And then understand the geology better. You know, we want to understand what's actually there and how economically viable it might be to build a mine here.
It's and people may, well, some people will recognize it, but understanding that geology allows you to begin to strategize your mine. And what I mean by that, when you look ahead 5 or 10 years and you're trying to picture how this mine's going to develop, the more information early on really helps you picture it.
Oh, precisely, Roy. I couldn't agree more. The more information you can get, and even at those earlier stages, that all feeds into cost saving and efficiency further down the line.
Because there's expensive decisions to be made early on.
There are.
You had mentioned something, I don't know if this is the same thing about visualizing, because we talked briefly about Atlas, which is an additional system or software?
It's a piece of software, essentially. So as I said, the BoxScan, being fit for purpose, has all of its software integrated offline, so you can use it in the field. Atlas is our only piece of online software. So it's a cloud-based software whereby clients can take the data coming off the BoxScan, so their imaging, their geochemistry, their mineralogy, they can take all of that data, and because it's non-proprietary formatting, we can basically upload it to Atlas. And what Atlas allows us to do is visualize the data as a series of down-core profiles against depth. And that's really where the data starts to become useful, and you start to see the use case of core scanning, because you can either zoom right out and view the data on an entire borehole scale, or you can zoom right in and really look at those sort of lithological changes in detail. But it's all about aiding the geologist, because you know, a geologist might have spent, I don't know, hours and hours logging core conventionally previously. What we want to do is free up their time so that they can do the geology by using data. They can do that geological interpretation. So that's really what we're trying to get at here. Yeah.
And I'm picturing the way it used to be done. You'd have a line here and a line here and a line here all across from this elevation to this elevation. And you're looking at it, and it just all kind of blends together after a while for some of us. But
no, you're completely right. It's about simplifying it as much as possible, but collecting as much data as you can to influence your interpretation and understand the geology better, I would say.
So you've got all these things happening. What's next for Geotek? You're developing all of this. You're dealing with clients globally, and
gosh, I tell you what, that's a very good question. So as I said, based in the UK, we have a huge distribution network globally. A couple of exciting partnerships have happened recently, so I'm excited to see where that goes. One of which is we've just acquired a company called Rockwash. They're actually based in Wales in the UK. Their primary focus is the analysis of cuttings for the oil and gas industry. However, we're trying to bring over their application into the mining side of things. So
analysis of cuttings.
Analysis of cuttings. So we're trying to bring it into the mining side of things so that we can apply what we're using, for example, in the BoxScan system, to chips analysis. So primarily we're focused on core, but the acquisition of Rockwash basically allows us to expand into the chips market as well, because
that's very interesting, because when you're drilling in the pit and you're doing, you know, the from the drill holes, often you're looking at the chips. And anyway, I don't have expertise in that area, but I'm just picturing the applications. That's very interesting.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You think of RC drilling and how much RC chips there actually are,
Yeah.
much of the time there's no analysis performed on chips at all,
Yeah.
which absolutely blows my mind considering all the technology we have nowadays. You really want to make the most out of that.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do with Rockwash is bring them on board to look at chips analysis and how that's applicable to the mining markets.
From the UK, chips, no fish.
Chips, no fish. No,
No,
well,
I'll help you with
there
your
might be
marketing.
fish. Yeah,
There might
thanks,
be
Roy.
fish, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll ask what your final thoughts are. What would you like to leave with the audience today?
Well, I think the take-home message, now that core scanning's become more mainstream and we're seeing it more and more adopted by the mining and mineral exploration community, I think the main thing to take home is that we're collecting a non-subjective data set here. That's what it's all about. So it's data that we can rely on. It's data that we won't have to relog the core. So for example, sometimes you have in the mining chain, sometimes you'll have geos logging the core samples and you might have some sort of change in management, whatever it is. The next team might come in, completely disagree with the geological interpretation and then relog the core again. And it's such an inefficient process.
Yeah.
So I think the take-home message is that we're trying to supply the mining and mineral exploration community with non-subjective data that we can rely on and trust and then feed it into whatever it might be.
And people
modeling.
can make their best decisions quicker.
Yeah, there you go, Roy. You got it in a nutshell.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me on the show.
I love doing these because I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And I learned today. So thank you for imparting that knowledge.
Yeah, great.
And thank you to our audience at Mining Now. We've been talking with Alice Dineen from Geotek and some very interesting new technology that they're implementing. If you want to contact Alice, you can do so through LinkedIn. And thank you to all our audience for joining us for another edition of Mining Now.